everyone. This is our vlog series. This is vlog number 8 so far. We are Imagineer. Imagineer has been in existence for over 12 years now. We are set up as a social enterprise, and we have been really focused in this time in everything around self-directed support and people leading the lives that make sense to them, and us doing whatever we can within our skill set and our experience in helping to make that happen. So we have a website if you want to find out a little bit more information, imagineer.org.uk, and we have a whole range of social media. So you can check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and I'm sure we're on Instagram as well. And our target tends to be Imagineer CIC. If you're interested in our previous vlogs, please take a look at our YouTube channel. I will ask Sarah to remind me what the YouTube channel title is in a second, but on there we have a playlist of vlogs, so please take a look. We've had wonderful, really rich conversations with a whole range of people covering things like how we share stories, how we connect in with communities, and also some of the major challenges we're facing in health and social care at the moment. Today we've invited Joolz Casey. So Joolz is with us today. Joolz has an amazing background of work and experience, setting up as a mental health nurse in the early stages, being fundamental in some of the changes to some of the big institutional settings, and was one of the driving forces behind In Control. But now Joolz has gone on and actually progressed all that experience and thinking into providing some wonderful insight around how we be together in the pursuance of our purpose in life. So before we introduce Joolz, Sarah, would you like to say hi and remind us what that YouTube title is for our channel?
Hi everybody, I'm Sarah and I'm the co-host with Liz, and our YouTube link is Imagineer and Support Brokerage Network. So if you type that into your search bar at the top of YouTube, you'll be able to find us. Please subscribe because it pushes our content into other people's feeds, and we really want to share these brilliant conversations that we're having with people. So the more people that subscribe, the more people get to see the content. And I'm going to hand over to Joolz now to say hello and introduce herself.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Liz. That was a wonderful introduction. That was really nice. I've got to follow that now. So yeah, I'm Joolz Casey, and I'm here talking about the why I founded Be Humankind and what Be Humankind is a little bit. And really with a focused lens around obviously health and social care, although Be Humankind is applicable to anybody, anywhere, and is much more about a sort of what I refer to as a sort of inside-out approach, rather than an outside-in approach. So that's one of the early ways I was describing the work that I was doing, and why I was doing it that way. I can come on and explain if that would be a good place to start. So as Liz said, I started in nursing. Well, I started in voluntary work essentially, and I was a volunteer at one of the largest mental health institutions in the late 70s, early 80s, in the Leeds area called Hyroids, and then also involved at Meanwood Park. And I think it was a very early recognition in me that I found all of that quite shocking, that in the world in which I was being brought up, which felt quite privileged in relation to some of the experiences that I observed, really, that people had seemed to be living in hospital. Well, they were living in hospital. Some have been there for over 20, 30 years and longer, as to, yeah, why were we doing that as a decent society? So that my early, I think, values were very much informed by some of those early experiences. Anyway, I went off and into Europe and spent a couple of years having fun, essentially. doing other things and learning about life, and which was all brilliant. And then decided to really focus back on that thing that had really impacted on me. So I trained as a registered nurse for people with learning disability and subsequently mental health. And fascinated by both. I then have gone on and studied human behaviour in a number of ways, both from an individual perspective. So I'm known as a sort of person-centred counsellor. So that was one of another really formative piece, I think, of my thinking and being. And I also studied what's often referred to as organisational development, so sort of behaviours and how we behave as humans together in organisations was a latter fascination. And yeah, all of that over my career, working both in the NHS, in local authorities, and in predominantly the charity sector. Really focused in, very linked to what you do at Imagineer, and we've got some real strong links, haven't we? We can come on and chat about maybe, but very linked to this sense of equality, I guess, and fairness in society, and this understanding or perception of some people in need. So the sort of charity system or the what we call the welfare state. And having worked to try and change it in many ways, probably on reflection about 5 years ago, my reflection was, I've been working for nearly 25 years, just over 25 years, maybe 6 years or so ago. And what have I achieved, and what do I need for the rest of my life? And it possibly might have been reading the book 3,000 Weeks that stimulated me as well into recognizing that life is
scary, isn't it?
Life is really short. And whilst I'm here on this earth, what is it that I'm here for? Which might sound like a very focused, selfish type question, but it's a very useful question to pose in terms of thinking about how you want to be known once you're not here, in a way. What would you want to be known by? And in doing some work around person-centered approach in a large UK charity, not a health or social care charity, although with some strong links, when I was doing a piece of leadership development, you might call it, or organisational change at the Guide Dogs for the Blind. I reconnected in with Franklin Covey, which is a company I'd done quite a bit of work with in my earlier days, which was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a really helpful inside out reflection of how to be my best self, essentially. It's out of date, it's Americanized, and those are some of its limitations, but it became something really important to me in terms of like 3,000 weeks. I've probably got about 1,000 weeks left. What do I want to do with those? What have I achieved? And how I've tried to help and support changing the welfare state for better. What do I want to try and do for the last 1,000 weeks, or hopefully not all of them, but and how does that match with the rest of the things I'd like to do in life? And in maturity, recognizing that life isn't just work and shouldn't be, and actually there's been times in my career that I've overworked, and that overworking has led me to be in stressful and situations and have anxiety and not be at my best. So interestingly, that has become a sort of core thing actually about Be Humankind, that I was reflecting on that, and that's sort of part of what Be Humankind is. So
can we talk about that, Joolz, for a second? Just picking up on that, because I mean, we had the pre-chat just before we started recording, and that was one of the key things that we really felt we wanted to pull out of this conversation is actually recognizing the level of stress and anxiety that's in the sector at the moment. And we're talking specifically about the health and social care sector, but it's wide reaching in terms of the welfare state, isn't it? It's not just health and social care, it's people's welfare, it's people's financial well-being, it's people's access to the community and their ability to be included, and citizenship. And when you look at it to its degree, there's a lot more than just health and social care professions affected. But what we're working with day to day, we're really seeing that tangibly, aren't we? In the way that people are conducting themselves, and you know.
Yeah, absolutely. There is this element, isn't there, that there is, like you were saying, Sarah, within society, there's this layer of anxiety, consistent anxiety that's there because of the level of change that's going on, the level of crisis situations that we're facing, the level of uncertainty we have as people. You know, we're not secure really as people generally at this moment in time. But in health and social care, isn't that just massively compounded even further, because there's the pressures on the system, there's a lack of resources to make things happen, there's an increase in demand. You know, there's so many things, high sickness levels, poor retention rates, lack of ability to get people in the role. So we then have an increasingly level of pressure on a decreasing number of people to deal with that level of pressure. And then that ripples out, doesn't it? So we have the people in that position that are experiencing that. And then we have families who are incredibly stressed and anxious around the well-being of their children and what's going to happen in their future as well. So you know, it's a real issue, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if I can answer that in two, looking at it from two angles, because it is definitely really important. And there's a sort of whole double loop back to Be Humankind and why I started it there. So in looking at the system, so the welfare state that we all love to hate, I guess, I think there's a couple of key things that to recognise about the welfare state. It is set up and was set up as a way of helping people in need, and then you know, we need to use the limited resources. So it was set up with a finite mindset rather than an infinite mindset, which I think is a really important part of understanding it as well. So we think we've got limited resources, we define them, we want to use them fairly, and we want to focus then on people that we see to be in need. So that whole thing about citizenship modelling and self-direction and brokerage are so critical to changing that principle. And the reason to change that principle is that this was the early understandings of Be Humankind, that was researching what would it take for the welfare state to be happier and healthier, and for more people to be getting the outcome that they desired. And that links back to some of the in control findings, that even though we were proportionately spending more and more money on health and social care as time has gone on over the last 30 years, we are proportionately giving people less and less value. So those unhappy families, those unhappy individuals, even though we are focusing all of our efforts, so that we've got this massive workforce of people who perceive their role in life to be in purpose of some work within the welfare state, whether that be a social worker, a nurse, a leader, a manager, but we see high levels of commitment across that structure of people committed to doing their best work to get the best outcome for people so they can live ordinary lives in valued ways. But we're failing that, because if we look at the outcomes, the structures, as I said, we're spending proportionately more money and getting proportionately less results if we look at it at a high level. So my sense of personally feeling worn out, not for the first time, probably the fourth or the fifth time, within a role working in some way within the system of the welfare state, and personally thinking, I'm really struggling here because I'm getting into a situation where I'm disagreeing with others. So I'm part of the problem, you know, and why am I ending up, when I'm someone that wants to really change this system and really help enable people to have equality, actually be in this system fighting to get change to happen with others that are resisting it, and then getting into situations where it starts to feel personal and I'm suffering and they're more likely suffering as well. So an absolute lose-lose culture, if that be it, within the system of the welfare state. And I've experienced that from a NHS, you know, working as a nurse, from a very senior person in an organisation, from a, you know, setting up in my part within In Control. I'd experienced this in all of those settings. So what is it about that we could do something about, rather than the system itself, if that makes sense? So we've got a welfare system that we believe is broken. We've got a welfare system that I believe has its values misplaced. So I think that's why I was fighting it, because I didn't agree with the values of the welfare system. I still don't agree entirely. I agree with the value of equality, and I agree with all the things that are written down about what we need to try and achieve. I don't agree with the principle that people are in need. So that's that sense of that real empowerment bias, and that ability to, you know, all of the good stuff like the support brokerage, all of the movement around self-direction, that's what I believe in. So, and I've started talking about this to people, going, wouldn't it be better if we completely restructure it and we called it the kindness state?
Yeah.
Because actually what we're learning from doing so much stuff around Be Humankind and you know, the habits and the superpowers, which are part of the sort of thinking and some of the values and principles that are within it, that we can, you know, we can have an experience and reflect on. What they enable us to be is immaterial to what the system is. So really what we're doing with Be Humankind and giving it to individuals, or people coming to us as individuals, is enabling people to, here you go, here's all of this stuff we've researched. It's not new. Some of it is human truth. We've not created them. Some of it is our modeling, because we spent time researching it and we've brought lots of stuff together. But what we're essentially offering is an experience of time and reflection for you as a person to work out what you're in purpose of in working in or alongside communities, people, the welfare system, being clear on what you're in purpose of and what your offer is and what your impact could be, and then being your best self every day to enable you to deliver on that. And that's what you can control. Whereas, and it's, sorry, go on.
It's interesting, isn't it, that whole what you really pulling out there and really shining a light on is that actually, if we just were to put a lens on the health and social care system, although I'm sure that we will find this elsewhere in the human dynamic and in human relationship, is that a lot of what we do and how we do it has become transactional rather than completely relational. And that element of people, how people are with each other in their job role, in the relationships that I has become unhealthy, because the focus has shifted, or may have always been, on transactional. Whereas what you've recognised and you've brought about in the Be Humankind programme is that doesn't create a healthy environment. It doesn't create a space and a dynamic for really serving purpose and making really positive change happen. Whereas if we shift the focus to relational, but actually how comfortable, how knowledgeable? How do we know to do the relational stuff? Because we've been stuck in the transactional within health and social care for so long. It's really interesting, isn't it, that if, as we've done, Joolz, in bringing Be Humankind, and Sarah, you know, we've been in that space of bringing Be Humankind thinking and being, how uncomfortable people initially feel with the idea, as a social worker, as an occupational therapist, as a speech and language therapist, whoever, of talking about themselves first.
Yeah, but how much is that what we've been preaching all of these years, that, you know, as we've modernized the welfare state in terms of its values and thinking, we've talked about it being about putting individuals first. We talk about, you know, we're all being part of this big movement of person-centered, and yet when we look at that for ourselves, it can feel uncomfortable. I mean, that's a really interesting reflection, isn't it, I guess. And I think where Be Humankind has taken me, and I keep talking about it as Be Humankind, it is simply this collection of ideas and thinking that you can experience and take some time to reflect and develop. But then you can really use it to help you think about, how do we work as individuals? How do we work as teams? How do we work in organisations in those more in pursuit of putting each other first? So like you say, in that being together first and getting that right, and then worrying about turning the handle on what we need to achieve. And if we just turn it round to the inside out approach rather than the outside in approach, we will make more progress, because we're getting in our own way. So and the more that we get frustrated with the system that's not working, and the more rubbish the outcomes are for people, the more hurt we may feel about that, because we're working really hard to achieve it, and yet people aren't getting what they need. So as humans, we don't work great when all we're getting is negative feedback, and we don't work great when all we're getting is turn the handle demands, like you say, that are they're not relational, they're just get this job done, you know, they're not natural human ways of being and living together. They're made up, you know. You've heard me talk about the big fat lie, you know, this sense that we should all be a good human being, you know, we'll grow up, do well at school, get a job, have a nice car, family, whatever. That's not happiness. That's not what makes us happy. If we've got 3,000 weeks to live on this earth, what is actually going to make us happy, and how are we going to go about achieving that? And if we can be really clear for ourselves, like for me, my purpose is to enable others to be their best self. So once I'd realized that with real clarity, that I get my kick from enabling others to be their best selves, my skills, my abilities lie in that enabling others to be their best selves. So why would I work as a director in a large charity that's got, you know, hundreds of things that need doing every day and really challenging decisions? Because in that role, well, you may argue that, you know, I could super hone my skills and enable that to still be living in that way, but actually no, not necessarily. So I think we're seeing a changing, you know, this quiet revolution of people leaving. I think and pandemic has fed into this, is people sort of having that chance to reflect and think, actually, what am I here for? What am I doing? Oh, actually working from home, or working more flexibly, or having more time to be in nature as part of my work. Actually, it's making a huge difference to how I feel about myself, therefore how I am to my family and loved ones, and how well I achieve things at work. So it becomes a win-win in that sense, if we take responsibility for that. And with the dragging the bodies out of the bottom of the river of torture, as I've begun to call it.
That's a very visual way of describing
it. Of the welfare state, because we've very little amount of preventative stuff going on, haven't we? It's all got cut. And we've got more and more into crisis. We've become more and more finite. And humans, again, we've done this in our research, as human beings, we've got this dilemma that we're finite. We've got 3,000 weeks or so on the planet. We're finite, but it's an infinite world. We are here for so long, but the world goes on and it ticks. And for me, the best way to live as human beings in this country and reflecting on the welfare state is to think about it infinitely.
Yeah.
If we think about
that saying, plant the seed for the tree that you'll never sit under, which I love that way of seeing, you know, actually how you function. What are you doing? What is your purpose? I'd love to hear, Joolz. I think, you know, the explanation you've given about your experience, where Be Humankind came from, what the purpose of Be Humankind is has been really useful to kind of get that sense of what it is. I'd love to hear from the moment when you had that moment where you went, this is what it is, this is the direction of travel for me now, and it's going to be framed as Be Humankind, and this is what it's going to be about. What's been the learning for yourself from that point to now? Where's it led to, and where has it been moments where you've realized the ideas, the vision that you had, the ideas that you had at the beginning around this is what it could look like, and this is the value it could bring, and this is the difference it could make? What have you learned yourself in that journey from initiating it to where we are now?
Yeah. Okay. So I absolutely recognized that point about sitting under the tree, I guess. I recognized that this is a massive change, and it's, you know, it's rooted in 50 years, the welfare state, if we consider that, of growth and change. And I've had a taster of all elements of it as to where it functions well, where it doesn't function well. And it's going to take a long time to change it. If we keep trying to finitely change it within a 3-year or a 5-year term,
Sticking plasters.
Yeah, we're just repeating the problem, and we're just pushing the soap around the bottom of the bath, aren't we? So how do we get the soap out the bath? And that was sort of some of what I was thinking, where it originated from. It was like, and that led me to think, why have we got a bath? So why have we created something that we call the welfare state or the system, when actually humans just live together, either in harmony or not in harmony? And when I look back, they live together better in groups of 50 in the original sort of tribal living, and then how we connected in circles of 50 to each other, etc., etc. And what from that is affecting us now in the way that we're trying to live and work. And actually we are in danger of being dominated by work and not living, if that makes sense. And that makes for no happiness for anyone. So a mixture of self-reflection on, I want to spend the rest of my however many 100 weeks I've got left living it well for me and my family. What my priorities, what will people say about me when I'm not here that I was good at or gave them? That's important to me. And then in terms of work, which is becoming a looser and looser concept to me, because I don't really think it's work, it's purpose. I would love to think that Be Humankind as a movement, eventually people will be sitting under the tree and describing what they do, and people won't say what job have you got. People will say, what's your purpose? What are you in purpose of?
Am I?
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Who are you?
And it'll just deconstruct all this nonsense we've created, and all these rules and all these boxes we've created that we're torturing ourselves by when we were talking about the anxiety and the stress and stuff. So what I've learned on that journey was, originally I wasn't intending to create a model or a movement or any of this stuff. I just wanted to reflect on what's my contribution been in pursuit of change, and why have I found it so tough? And each time I've done it, I've ended up being the loser. And I'm not a quick quitter, was the other thing I've recognized. And actually, one of the things we really need to get better at, and this, I think, not just me, but generally in society, is quitting when it's not working and trying something else, and just having a much more imaginative or a much more infinite mindset to it. You know, I don't want a job for life for 30 years. Why would I want that? And, you know, if we talk to younger people now, some of this being is coming through. They don't want to work in one place for 30, 35 years. They want to experience life, and they're much more purposeful about that. So it's coming. I can see this stuff's coming. But for Be Humankind, what we've learned on the journey is what's most important is to keep coming back to the challenge of being rather than doing. So that by being together, we've got, as you know, we've got this sense of who am I? What am I in purpose of? How can I live my best self? And how do I do that with and alongside others? How do I want to interact with others? And then the super skills or powers, as we call them, you know, empathy, kindness, these things that when we researched it, that were missing in workplaces. So in your average health or social care setting, where hundreds of good people that really see what they do as more than a job, all stressed and fighting and not doing well and falling out with each other, because we've created this world of trouble for ourselves in that sense of trying to get all of that, because we're focusing on transaction, as you said, Liz, and we need to think about the fact is focusing on the transaction of a finite budget with a finite resource in an infinite world. It's not going to end well. It's not ending well. You know, where people are going through the system of health and social care, let's say, or any system, education, any system, and we're applying help to people because we see them as being in need. And it's disempowering, and they're ending up down in more trouble. And then because we're ending up with just a lot of reactive services, the skilled staff are then having to pull people out the water when they've been through so much trouble and trauma. And then it's a much harder ask to help them find their feet and get on with their life again. So we need to go, you know, the classic go up the stream and find out what's going wrong at the top. And we need to apply our intention and some thought to that. And that's what I was in purpose of with Be Humankind, was let's look at what would it take to do it very differently, to get rid of the bath and stop trying to catch the soap, but actually just live together in happiness, because actually ultimately people want to be happy. What does happy mean to me is different to what it means to another person. If I have a disability, or if I have a health need, if I need, if I'm homeless, if I'm getting elderly, all of these things that are just naturally human and they happen, you know, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't be, oh, they're people in need. They're just citizens. And
we all go through a period of our life at some stage where we could be deemed as being in need, you know, and actually, if you think about that and the demand that would then place on the system and the welfare state, it's ridiculous to even think that welfare state has the capacity to address that. But actually bringing in what you framed there, Joolz, and the Be Humankind as a way of thinking and being alongside each other should mean that actually we are able to be there for each other in a more relational sense.
Do you think that people have lost that I don't know how to explain it, that skill, that capacity and that mindset of being together and being connected and doing life naturally together as communities? Because we've almost created a society where the welfare state takes care of that problem, so we don't have to think about it. Off you go to hospital, off you go to a care home, off you go to a long stay institution miles away from your family. We'll shut you away and we'll forget about you. And and it's almost like communities have lost the skill and the understanding of how to be alongside one another in all of those different ways that we show up as humans. So we don't know how to be alongside an autistic person. We don't know how to be alongside somebody with dementia necessarily, or somebody that has fluctuating mental health needs, or we just don't understand it because that's someone else's job.
Yeah.
And unless you're the person doing the job who's experiencing all the pressure and the stress, you haven't got that insight. And do you think that's part of the problem as well, that we've forgotten, or we've not even learned in our generation, because we've had this welfare state, how to be together?
Yeah. No, absolutely. As you're talking, absolutely makes sense, doesn't it? Because what we've got, what I'm describing as this welfare state, is this control and power taken off people. So that we can help them. Well, it's a win-lose. Ultimately, as a mindset thing and a human thing, it's giving your control away for something that you're anxious about or worried about, or is not working well for you, to someone else in a system that we know is finite and can hardly help and will take quite a long time to do so, etc., etc. And then giving you back something at some point that's not actually what you wanted. It's not actually what you needed. And actually, you're right. What we replace that with is just community-driven, self-directed support for each other. And it, if we did that, and I know there's been some efforts to do that, but if we did that one person at a time with our own intention and our understanding of, it's a huge bit of unlearning, essentially, isn't it? It's back to understanding how we can support and live well together as a community with all.
It's learning to make connections again, isn't it? Because all those connections have been severed from the institutionalization of society, haven't they? Oh, this is deep. I like it.
I can sense a follow-up vlog beginning to emerge.
But it's
things
all about connection, isn't it? The Be Humankind stuff is really interesting because me and Liz have been through the program. Liz is now a facilitator as well. I would call myself a practitioner of Be Humankind, and what I found useful going through the program was it's quite uncomfortable, makes you look at yourself. It makes you stop and do that deep reflection that you need to do. And like, it's interesting because in self-directed support, particularly in support brokerage, we preach deep listening to other people. When we're alongside other people, we do deep listening, we do the observation, we notice things, and we use that information to really get to the essence of the person and how they tick. Don't think we often do it for ourselves. And the Be Humankind program has really forced me to do that, in that really uncomfortable kind of, I don't know if I like what I'm looking at, and here are all of my hang-ups and my challenges and my control issues. And actually what it's made me do is think, right, what do I need to do to address that? How do I work around that? What adjustments do I need to make? How do I need to be using language to let people know that I struggle with this stuff? And that, I think that is the starting point, isn't it? It's starting with ourselves. That's the point of Be Humankind, so that we then know how to make those connections with other people, and then make the connections with other people is what starts to build community, isn't it? Wow, I feel like I've just had an epiphany moment.
And the program it's fundamental, isn't it, in really helping us to see and think differently. And for me, it was really fundamental in recognizing not only what you said, Sarah, that moment of kind of, hang on a second, where am I? Where am I in this life that I've created? And where am I when I'm alongside others? What am I bringing of myself when I'm alongside others? And I found now that when I used to do preparation for meetings or events or conferences, I used to go through what we need to talk about, what we need to address, how we need to feedback on actions, thinking about what direction we're going in next. Never did I think about, how am I going to be in that conversation? And what do I need to bring of myself into that conversation? How do I make sure that I can be my best self in helping others to feel respected, heard, listened to, and, you know, enjoying the actual experience of doing this together. It can be enjoyable. And I've since doing the program and the facilitator training, I'm making much more time to consider them elements of what we do.
Yes, some really strong links to some of the learning around leadership and organisations, isn't there, in there in Be Humankind, about how actually a leader is someone that takes loving responsibility for the people that they're there to empower. That's it, you know, or something similar to that. Leadership is not managing people. It's not, you know, we recognize surely that, so even within that welfare state that we've talked about quite a lot, that's pretty broken and, you know, set up to fail, it's a win-lose scenario because of its founding principles and values. So to make change in that has got to be all of us, one person at a time. You know, we can't create a new structure for it as a transactional thing. Basically, we tried it within Control, and yes, it's had some effect. And you've got Imagineer and you're doing support brokerage. It's brilliant work. You know, people are getting individual lives based on their individual wants and wishes rather than boxed into a system that gives them what they don't want. So it's a great outcome, but for a few people. So there is no other way, I don't think, to change that system than one person at a time, which is all of us both feeling at our best. Therefore, we contribute the right stuff, but also having a chance to reevaluate our values, reevaluate, you know, what we think of ourselves as a leader. Recognize, you know, these superpowers we identify that make for good change are empathy, kindness, flow, and being our best, in effect. So being really clear on our outcomes. Those are the things, particularly listening and deep listening and empathy and kindness, that are missing in a standard workforce anywhere, never mind just health and social care, anywhere. So that, you know, that in some ways it's not rocket science to realize that actually if we just focus on being better at listening and deep listening and empathy and kindness, stuff will shift. You know, we'll start to see difference. And the challenge for that, like you say there, Liz, and Sarah, you said it as well, is that once it focused on you and you've got to do it, it's a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because
we've definitely is
not done it. It's been we know that we think we should be better at it, and we know when it's not working for us, so we can recognize when we're losing and someone else is winning, and if we're, you know, we found our humanity, we can recognize when we're controlling stuff so that someone else is losing, and we can, if we can recognize that when we control things as a human being and control others, it's because we're stressed and anxious. And if we can recognize that, and we can work in an environment of trust where we know that it's okay to be with each other, and therefore it's okay to say, do you know what? I'm not feeling very safe with you in this environment. And can we talk about that so that I can be better in helping or doing my bit towards this future of what we should be doing together? If professionals or people felt they could say those things rather than feel they've got to defend their role or not let anyone know that actually they feel like they feel really vulnerable, let's say, in that scenario. So therefore human beings put our defenses up. So all these absolute truths about humans and how we behave, just going back to those in terms of empathy and understanding and knowing we'll be our best self when we're not in an anxious state. We have a simple model, I know you both know it, at Be Humankind, where we encourage people to check in on a human feeling level before we do anything together. And it's so powerful because it just means that we're aware of the stuff that's going on for someone else that we can't see, because 80-90% of what's going on for someone's going on not externally, internally. And unless we start to get better at these human conversations about what's going on for you, what's your mindset today, what can I help you with, what do you need, and really listening to understand that, we won't see better conversations or really good ideas. Organizations that say we want more creativity, come in and run us a program, we want more creativity. And it's like, well, you need to start with psychological safety then. And it's like, what?
Absolutely. I can't understand why more organizations haven't grasped this about workplaces. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you know any basics about the human brain, you know that when we're stressed or we're fearful, we're in fight or flight part of our brain, and we can't be creative when we're in that state. And so many people go day to day in that state continuously and never get out of it because of the environment they work in and because of the pressure that they feel. And you know, how on earth can you communicate effectively and be creative and even be functional and organized in some senses if you're in the fight and flight part of your brain all the time? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And we've recognized there's another state. There's the stick state. There's the fight or flight or stick, stay the same.
Freeze.
I think that part of the culture and the issue of the culture and what's going wrong in health and social care is people are frozen, they're stuck. Because they've had experiences of fight and flight, they've had experiences of low morale around them, they've had experiences of people appearing to be really challenging in a very personal way, which makes you feel very vulnerable. So it's safer to stick and to stay. And that's why we've no innovation and
rock the vote.
Nobody's very happy. So you know, it's a lose-lose in that sense. And absolutely, just focusing in on those very nature of humans and being humans together. And really, I think people need to feel confident that they can put in their day reflection and social time, particularly now we've got the working from home stuff as well. That the brain needs that. We need that interaction, and actually it's probably twice as valuable as something that we're doing that's transactional. Because
thank you so much,
Joolz.
Sorry, were you about to cover something else?
No.
I just think that what we've talked through there is really fundamental, isn't it? And I'm sure that anybody who's been listening to the vlog and hearing the conversation that we've had, a lot of what you've touched on there, Joolz, and Sarah, what you were mentioning as well around, you know, getting into that space of being able to be that way as being one of the fundamental areas that quite often gets overlooked. I'm sure for people who have been listening, some of the things that you've spoken about there would have really resonated with people as something that they feel is missing or something that they recognize is needed. If it has, and I'm sure it has, but how would people find out more, Joolz? If they wanted to know more about Be Humankind, if they wanted to maybe find out about one of the programs or have a look at some of the materials around Be Humankind, how would people find that out? How would people do some further research?
It's a really good, it's a simple question. I can give a really simple answer, but I've recently, when people have been saying that, I've gone, if people really need it, they'll go find it. You know, this is like got to be self-directed stuff. So yeah, there's a website, there's a community that people can join that's free to join. So I think, Sarah, you're going to add those to the we'll
pop them in the show notes underneath on YouTube when we premiere this episode. So we've got the website, we've got the Mighty Networks platform, which is the online community you've just mentioned. You are on Twitter as well, Joolz, aren't you? I know you're not that active on there.
We're not active on Twitter, not very keen on some of the values on Twitter. So
that's fair enough.
We are on LinkedIn.
And you're on LinkedIn. Brilliant. So yeah, we'll include the links to all of those really helpful spaces in the show notes underneath this episode. Please do share it if you've watched it and you've thought, oh, this has been really helpful. I think more people should listen to this. Put it up on your LinkedIn, put it up on your Facebook, your social media, whatever platform you use. Get other people logging on and watching it. As we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel itself to help push it into people's feeds. We want this conversation to be listened to. And obviously we've got our own Imagineer website. 3 social media platforms are our main ones, so LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook for us, all at Imagineer CIC. We do have an Instagram account. We're not that active on it, but you'll see some of our big picture graphic facilitation stuff on there, which is obviously very visual. So Molly, our main graphic facilitator, often posts on the Instagram account, so you can find us there as well. And yeah, just have a poke around on our website. There's lots of brilliant resources, free downloads, blogs to read as well, some papers that we've published, all sorts of bits and pieces that if you're on a bit of a quest to think about doing things in a different way, and you're really on a bit of a value search in terms of feeling conflicted where you're at the moment and wanting to make a change in your life or in your workspace, then have a poke around, because there's lots of really good stuff on there. And yeah, please stay tuned for our next episode, which will be number 9. Liz, were you going to say something?
Yes, I was just wondering, I'm waiting for the moment where we have our tradition that we've instilled in our vlogs.
It's absolutely.
Our last vlog was with the wonderful Tim Keelty, who was talking about the paper that he'd recently written and his observations of, similar to what we've talked through actually, around what's happening in health and social care and the challenges on the system, and some of his thoughts. So we have a tradition in our vlogs where we ask the person we're having a conversation with to ask a question of the next person that we're going to do a vlog with. Hope that made sense. But his question, therefore, for you, Joolz, it's a little bit of a gnarly one, but his exact wording, I think I've got this right, Sarah, is: what parts of this sorry mess can you take personal responsibility for?
Okay, this sorry mess being the welfare state, would that be? Yeah,
that is what Tim's referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have taken my personal journey to take responsibility through the reflection that led to Be Humankind, actually, and that, that's my offer in terms of what can I do about this. And I guess in response to that, I think I'd want to work hard to reframe sorry mess, because to enable me as a person, so we've learned all this stuff about language and how it builds walls, and I have talked a lot about the welfare state and what's not working in it, but very much I have my mindset is eternal optimism. So and there has to be, in a way, my contribution within the 3,000 weeks or so that I'm on the planet actually reflected, it's 4,000 weeks, isn't it? I must be doing my maths in my head wrong. It's definitely 4,000 weeks that the average person lives, I think. Is what's my contribution to that, so that I am of value and that I can live my purpose. So my purpose being to serve others, to enable people to be their best self, more specifically in that service. It's being in service. It's interesting because the original welfare state talked about service. This is really where it started. And if we can just reconnect back to that, as to what am I in service of, and in that service, what do I offer? Then that's not a sorry mess. That's me taking responsibility for the best I can be to offer service, to do that differently, or whatever that is. If we all did that individually, with a different mindset, with a bias for putting being together before doing, and a real focus on what do you need, how can I help, with our colleagues, So almost like there's a real need to put ourselves first in recognition of not having done that as humans in this system for so long, that will then enable us to be able to transform it from within, and almost from within our minds, not from within what it actually is, if that makes sense. And I think that's the movement that Be Humankind seeks to offer, is that this transformation we talk about, this movement away from serving people in need, and this movement towards enabling everyone to be their best, is probably what part of this mess I would take responsibility for, if I think that answers it quite precisely, doesn't it? Yeah.
Fantastic answer.
I would change
brilliant.
sorry mess, I would reframe that personally.
Yeah.
And if we could all do that, and then really work on that together, because the challenge then is to, well, who's going to turn the handle? It's okay for you to say that, you know, you're not working in a challenging sort of command and control role within health or social care at the moment, and take my hats off to everyone that is, because no, I'm not. But if we can help all of that to think again about why we're here and what my contribution is, so that what I contribute is I can go home knowing I've done my best and I'm my best self, and when I'm not my best self, I can ask for what I need. Then almost like the outcome, all of the research, you know, that I've done and I've read has led us to know that to get really person-centered or human-centered services or offers to people requires us to start with ourselves. So you did some reflection of that, didn't you, Sarah, about how can we ask others to think about what they need to be enabled when we don't know what we need. So there's that real link between starting with self, not to be about, not to stay there, but just to start there, because starting with self and getting ourselves into the right mindset, and then thinking about how I am with others and empathy, and how can I serve and what do you need, we will then be placed in a the best we can be, without knowing how to control our anxiety or the things that worry us, so that we can be in service. And the outcomes will happen surely naturally, because everybody's feeling their best self and supporting each other in good ways. But we just become obsessed, haven't we, with the sort of transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to pass the baton on to you now, Joolz. We have no idea who we'll be talking to next, and we have no idea what we'll be talking about. But what question would you like to ask our next guest?
Yeah, okay, sort of pretty easy for me in a way, in terms of like coming at it from a Be Humankind angle, is to ask somebody, how kind are you to yourself? And how kind are you to those around you? And what would you want to change about that? Sorry, that's 3 questions.
That is 3 questions in one.
Take any one of those.
We can go with 3 questions in one.
They're all linked. They're all linked. And the thing about kindness as well, just to mention, is, because the person has not heard this maybe, or knows about Be Humankind, is when we talk about kindness as a superpower, we're not talking about nice. So we're not talking about being nice to ourselves or being nice to others. We're talking about real kindness, that stuff which is often challenging, and requires us to do so that we are authentic, I guess. You know, how can I be authentically kind to myself? What really is not working in an average day for me, and what could I do to improve it, sort of thing. And if we are, you know, not kind to ourselves, then the reality is we're therefore not kind to others, and we're not serving well. So, or the degrees of that, obviously. So it's quite a challenging question.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and for contributing into our vlog series with just the wisdom and insight that you have around, you know, the Be Humankind model. Model that you've developed. We like to call it an experience, though, don't we, Joolz? We've had this conversation around not reiterating the language that we often hear being used, and actually it is an experience. Because it's interactive and it's dynamic, and it fundamentally changes the way that you relate to yourself and others. So thank you so much, and thank you for being the person that's brought it together and actually made it real, made it something that people can access and find value in as well. So
well, that's the joy of it, is that sharing it literally, because that's living the Be Humankind way in a way, isn't it? You know, this is a self-directed movement. This is the joy of working in this way, which isn't about someone being in charge and everyone having to do what they say. We, you know, that learning of being together and putting ourselves first and checking in with each other and asking each other what we need from each other is so powerful, and it's just a wonderful way to work. But it's get that, is that work? Yeah, it's
yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think we in the fear of being corny, it's about going forth and being kind.
Yes. Very corny, Liz.
sorry we'll think of a little like character to go with that one.
Yeah, no, we'll let you that sounds, it is about kind, definitely, isn't it? So yeah, how kind are you to yourself, and how could you improve that?
Thank you so much for the question. We look forward to asking that to our next guest. So thank you very much, Joolz, and goodbye, viewers.
Thanks, Joolz.
Thank you, bye.